Gerard Brennan and Richard Hardie. We're going to be talking all things the publishing and writing world today. I know we've covered a lot throughout our shows anyway, of different authors, and had a sneak peek into the industry, I suppose. But today we're going to take maybe a bit of a deeper look for anybody who is aspiring to have their name in print. So we're going to be talking to the guys about that later on.
Yes, I mean, publishing, writing, it's a world. When you're on the outside of it, you think, how do people actually get into that world? And I think it's a world that can confuse people and daunt people, and often put off absolutely brilliant writers, and they never get their work published. So we're going to chat about how things actually get from the page onto the bookshelves, and all of the possible helpers and all of the possible pitfalls along the way.
Absolutely. And of course we're going to be hitting you with some fantastic music from the Publishing Talk. We are now joined by Richard Hardie, author and chief executive of Authors Reach and Authors Conglomerate. Richard, welcome to Belfast 89.
Thank you, Sam.
So we have Gerard and Catriona with us here as well.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Kat. How are you?
Grand.
Good. You don't mind me calling you Kat?
No, do you know, I'll answer to anything.
I've heard that, yeah.
So, Richard, we were talking before the song there a little bit just about the publishing world and how difficult it can be to access a publisher, some of the difficulties in engaging with them. And I suppose we just wanted to talk to yourself about a little bit about some of the alternatives. I know, Gerard, you have gone into self-publishing in the past.
Yeah, I've tried a little bit of everything. You could nearly call me a hybrid author because I've done self-publishing. I've had a very small publisher try to publish me. I've had just e-publishing, and now I happen to have an agent, so hopefully I'll be trying the other side of things at some point, you know. So there's been a lot to learn in every area of that, you know. A lot of it boiling down to the author has to do more than just write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because in Authors Reach we have published authors with small publishers, and also with one of the girls is also with one of the very big publishers for other work, and we've got self-published authors. So it's, you know, so it is a real. I think people are having more and more of a hybrid career. No?
It's a diverse playing field.
Yes.
So I suppose, Richard, talk to us a little bit about Authors Reach then, and what you were trying to achieve there.
Well, Authors Reach is a cooperative made up of 5 authors who each address a different genre. So we have horror, paranormal, historical romance, young adult, and I think that's probably it, but it covers most genres.
I think you've got crime there, Richard.
Richard, you're in trouble for
crime.
forgetting that one.
2 crime writers in the studio and you forgot
crime then, Catriona. Well, Gerard does too, of course.
Oh, yeah.
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 2 of the best authors in Belfast, I understand.
Well, that's what everybody tells us, yeah.
We tell each
What
other.
we did with Authors Reach, we realised that although we were all published by a publisher, not necessarily the same one, that we were doing most of the marketing work. So if there was going to be any publicity, or if we were going to go into shops, then it would be us that actually did that. There was no distribution contract. There was no way of getting into shops unless we actually did a lot of footwork. And yet publishers take a very large share of the royalty that comes back to the author. It's a large percentage. I won't say how much. But it means that we were actually providing money for the publisher, who did a tremendous thing in the first place. They got us published. They actually got us into print. And that's an amazing thing to do. Gerard, you had a lot of problems getting into print, I know, but you've now got an agent. That's one of the hardest things to do in publishing, is getting an agent.
Yeah, it's hard and it's demoralising, and you know, you nearly want to quit every time you get a rejection letter. It takes a lot of doggedness to just keep going, you know.
Well, J.K. Rowling's famously had 42 rejections from agents.
Yeah, I'm proud to say she hasn't beat me yet.
So I hope you're going to be as successful as J.K. Rowling.
I don't even really want to be that successful, you know.
I don't know.
You liar.
I think she's done a tremendous job.
Yeah.
In encouraging kids, and I write for young adults, so encouraging them to read means that there's a greater marketplace for all us other, much lesser mortal authors than J.K. Rowling. But what we did was to look at the marketplace and decide that the 5 of us, who were all friends anyway, and reasonably successful in our own right, all had a skill set. In the case of one of us, she's a very good proofreader and editor. Another one is an excellent artist, graphic artist, so she can design covers. She understands formatting, so she could get the correct formats up to printers. Another one is a distribution. I won't say a guru because it's me, but understands the distribution marketplace. And another one is a tremendous marketeer. Catriona just churns out books. She's wonderful. She has 13 books to her name, and I dream of the days when I would have 13 books. But between us, we covered all the skill sets that we felt would be necessary for a publisher. So we thought, okay, we'll form a sort of a gang of 5, and we'll support each other in our own endeavours, sticking with the same publisher. And bit by bit, we realised we can actually do the publishing as well. So we formed Authors Reach and registered it as a limited company. Originally, it's dormant. That's fine, because it means that nobody else can take the name, and we have a fully fledged company, in effect. And we then looked at how we could actually take it to market through bookshops, because most publishers are just keen to do ebooks or to sell through Create Space and go on to Amazon as a paperback. But you don't get into shops doing that. And it's true that the biggest number of books is still sold through bookshops.
Yeah.
Like Eason's in Ireland and Waterstones in the UK, and all the independents over here. There's more than 1,000 independent bookshops. They're not sitting there watching Amazon, they're competing, and they're beating them. So we went to a company called Gardner's, who are the biggest distributors in the UK. I was already working with them on my own books, and they were tremendous. They backed us, and they took all the Author Reach currently published books into stock, which meant that we weren't print on demand, which is still a stigma to bookshops. We were actually stocked by the biggest distributors. So when they actually went online from a bookshop, they would see that our books were available for next day delivery. That's great. That's a major, major thing. We now have a consignment agreement, which means that they are constantly renewing that stock level and a higher stock level in Gardner's. And as more and more books transfer from other authors, from other publishers through our authors, or new books are launched, those will also go straight to Gardner's and be available to the general marketplace of bookshops. Even better, we've now negotiated with Waterstones that they will allow all Authors Reach books to be stocked and sold in Waterstones. Doesn't mean to say you'll find it on the shelves, but you can actually go into a Waterstones now anywhere in the UK and order any Authors Reach books. That sounds an easy thing, but in fact, they only do that to around 600 odd books out of 6,000 which are available currently and sold in the UK.
So is there anything... sorry to interrupt you. Is there anything left that Author Reach can't provide that a publisher can, or have you covered all the bases now?
We don't...
Yeah, editing is one of the things we don't have a major strength in. Proofreading we do, but we do use external editors. And where there's something where we don't have the skill set, we're more than happy to go outside and do it.
Overseas distribution as well, Richard, and audio and media rights. But I trust Richard. I would guarantee that within a year or two, he'll have mastered all of those as well.
Excellent. I will.
Just listen to you talking.
European rights, we already have. Gardner's are the biggest European distributors, so we're already.
So it's only the US and Canada and places like that still to be.
Well, Gardner's again have affiliates in America, and subject to our agreement, they will then use those affiliates and distribute in the States for us. But all our books already have dollar pricing on them.
Just listening to you there, Richard, you know, you're talking about distribution and contracts and negotiations. You know, this is an industry that you're talking about, and for somebody who's maybe just got their first manuscript ready to go, the whole idea of getting into all of that would seem so daunting.
It's a minefield.
Yeah, but this has been, it sounds like anyway, this has been a real process, and certainly Catriona and Gerard have talked about their process and trial and error and learning as you go through the industry yourself. Would that be much your view of it?
I think it would be. I mean, we've all made mistakes since we launched Authors Reach, and certainly beforehand. But the experience that we've all had in life leading up to Authors Reach has stood us in great stead. I used to be the sales director for a very large software company, and I negotiated multi-million-pound contracts, and some of those were extremely difficult. So I'm quite used to going into a major contract and picking bits out. Mm-hmm. I've worked with a couple of agents, neither of whom actually published me, but they did me an awful lot of good in advising me what to look for inside a new contract. What would be the good things and what would be the bad things? And there's many bad things that a publisher will ask you to sign up to, which are totally not in the author's interest.
Just on the issue of contracts there, I would advise anyone who is about to sign a contract with a publisher to get their solicitor to look at it, because a lot of publishers' contracts are written from the publisher's perspective and very much with the publisher's interests at heart, not
that's
the author's.
Absolutely true, because I saw a blog post a couple of days ago which said, if a publisher says, no, don't bother to show my contract to your solicitor or to an agent, then don't sign them. Mm-hmm. What have they got to hide? And it's amazing how many of them do not want you to have an agent.
Yeah.
And the previous publisher that I had, the vast majority of the authors they had, and they had 170 linked to them, they did a good job for them, in fact, but the vast majority didn't have agents. They were wannabes. They wanted to be printed, and this particular publisher was pretty good at getting a first-time author out into the marketplace. What you did with your book once it was out there was up to you. But they could get you out there, and if you had any marketing capability, then the world was your oyster. You could go out and do things. What you didn't have was the clout of a big publisher behind you, and that still counts an awful lot with companies like Waterstones, and I would think with Eason's too. Mm-hmm. They want the name of Transworld Books. On the other hand, if you can show that you're actually going to, you've got enough wish and want to make that marketplace your own, and you've got the clout and you've got the capability and you've got a business plan as to how you're going to do it, yeah, they'll market with you. They'll go with you. And that's being proven with Authors Reach.
Cards is always
I suppose one of the myths that it's worth dispelling is I think we all have an idea of this overnight success business. You know, people talk about the overnight success and it's just not.
It take me 40 years to do it.
But it's just not reality. And I suppose that myth is one of the aspects that when people are rejected makes them feel disillusioned, where perhaps they don't realise, no, you get knocked back and you'll get a little bit of something going your way and then you're going to get knocked back again on another thing.
Yep. And you look at the highly successful authors in the UK or in America, like J.K. Rowling or like Terry Pratchett, unfortunately dead, Bernard Cornwell, people like that. It took them years before they actually had the first glimmer of success. And J.K. was famously writing her book in a cafe when she could dash down when a kiddie was asleep. It took her ages.
I think that is one of the most destructive things, this myth that's out there that people become overnight success and that their first book is going to sell millions. For the odd person that happens, but it's extremely rare. It's much more common that if you Google these supposed overnight successes, you'll see that they've written 20 books.
Yeah.
You know, and they've been writing for maybe 30 years, 10 years maybe before the first book got into print. So I think if you go into writing thinking that you're going to make millions initially, it's just, don't go into it for that reason. You've got to have a burning desire to write. I really believe that. I don't know what Gerard thinks about that.
Yeah. The other thing as well is I find that people, when they do think about the overnight successes and everything, they think, well, I'll try and do that exactly the same as how they've done that. Yeah. And the problem with that is that you can't really write to a trend, because by the time you've got your book finished, that trend has already shifted on to the next thing. You know, you have to write and just hope that your thing is going to fall into the current trend when you've actually got it finished.
Absolutely, like Vampire Detectives.
Yeah.
That's very, very true. And the young adult books that I write, I had to be very conscious in the first one not to use jargon and not to use street talk, because by the time the book actually got published, whatever I was using as street talk would no longer be current. people wouldn't understand it. Kids wouldn't know what on earth I was talking about.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that actually.
Yeah, well, until the publishing industry can sort of speed up, this is always going to be a problem, because you deliver a book to a big publisher, it takes about a year before it's actually hitting the shelves.
And do you think...
Then you're lucky.
Yeah.
And do you think that's one of the reasons why more and more people are either going to small publishers or self-publishing? It's the sheer frustration on having to wait that length of time.
Yeah, I think there's that, plus there's the fact that there's nowhere where you can learn how to best form your career as a writer. You know, you can go and do business studies, or you can, learn how to be an accountant or something. You can do a creative writing class, but that doesn't always teach you about the pitfalls of publishing. So unless there's some way of being, guided through these things, especially for people who come from working class backgrounds or something, they don't have opportunities to do internships at publishers and things like that. It's not really going to change. It's just going to be people, again, trial and error their whole way through their whole careers.
I think that's right. You have a tremendous background, of course, Gerard, in that you lecture at Queen's University, don't you?
Yeah.
In creative writing.
Yeah.
So that gives you a tremendous background.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting, and it can be inspiring at the same time. The workload can make it harder to actually squeeze in those writing hours, but when you do get a chance to write, you're sort of fired up because you've fed off the enthusiasm of your students, and you're sort of constantly covering the basics for yourself as well. Which is never a bad thing. It keeps all your foundations for your writing very strong. But yeah, it gives you great insight. One of the greatest things is, though, that you do find a lot of people who come in and say, yeah, well, I want to be the next E.L. James and write another 50 Shades of Grey and be a millionaire, and you're like,
don't want to write that badly.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But you do get other perspectives, people that ask questions such as, do you think you need to be in pain to write truthfully, and stuff like, real emo kind of stuff, and you get to sort of gently guide those people towards a happier life, which is nice.
Writing is whatever people want to read.
Yeah.
That's a success. I mean, look at James Joyce. He couldn't even use punctuation.
Yeah. Right enough.
That's right. Gosh, we won't have to wait till we're dead before we're famous, will we,
This
Richard?
is true. Well, I might. You won't.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us, and it's definitely been enlightening for me, and I hope it has been for our listeners as well.
It's been a pleasure.
And we're going to play a little bit more music now.